I'm originally from Rochester, New York. I also went to college there at Rochester Institute of Technology, where I studied film and animation. And at that time, I was really interested in going into feature films, specifically animated feature films. I wanted to work at Pixar really badly, because I loved their films, their animation was gorgeous. But then, by the end of my 4 years there, I wasn't really quite as developed as an artist as I needed to be to work in that industry. And somebody had suggested to me that I check out this graduate school program called the Entertainment Technology Center at Carnegie Mellon. And so I applied and I got in and I went there. And it's really a program all about entertainment of all kinds. But it specializes in interactive entertainment, which for the most part is games, but not exclusively games. And so very quickly I was making games in that program. And one that I'll talk about a lot is Ethereal. That was the first game that I ever made. And that game, I worked on that for 8 months. I worked on that at IGN Entertainment. I don't know if you guys know IGN. Yes? Okay. They're a big media games journalism group that's in San Francisco. We were in their offices, and we worked alongside other indie developers while we were making that title. We formed a company. It was an incredible experience. So as Mario said, I can't actually talk about any of the work that I'm actually doing for EA right now because it's all confidential, but I can talk about that. Yeah, so I'll keep going. So as an artist, really what I'm doing is trying to communicate to players. That means that I need to create something that's both immersive and engaging for players, but at the same time communicates the design of the game to players so that they understand what's happening. And really, I need to balance how the game looks, like the quality of how things look, with messaging that design to the players. Because if something looks good, but it doesn't, if players can't understand what's happening on screen, it's still completely useless. All right, so Ethereal, as I said, it's a medieval online combat game. It was a personal combat game. So you would control a person, and you would rush into combat with your sword and shield, or a maul, or a greatsword, or a stiletto, and you would essentially run up to other people and lock onto them and beat the crap out of them, basically. Again, I wish I had footage that I could show you, because it's just, the gameplay is just wailing on people with swords. So when I got onto the project, it had already been running for about 5 months. And at that time, we weren't really happy with where the art direction was at. The game wasn't really it was a little bit too fantastical. Like looking at these characters, like the design on that guy's shield is like kind of weird. It's not something that you would really see in a medieval setting. So we really wanted to go back to the drawing board to sort of address that. And what that meant is just immersing ourselves in medieval reference material. So we watched movies, we Googled tons of stuff, we watched documentaries, and we even had a couple of our team members went and did a medieval combat reenactment at, I think, something called Penzik, where like 10,000 people got together and they put on armor and they got swords, wooden swords, and they ran at each other and beat the crap out of each other. But we learned, you know, we tried to take all of this and really infuse what we learned from this reference material and drive that into the design of our game and the way that things looked and the way that things felt. So here we have, and the lighting's not super great, but we had two factions in the game, the Ethereals and the Rebellion. And while this was their original design, the design was pretty good, but the problem is that one was clearly very evil, and one was clearly good. And we really didn't want it to feel that way, because we wanted players to sort of say that we didn't want players to feel like they were being positioned into playing one of the factions because they wanted to be good or evil. The difference between them isn't good and evil in the fiction of the game. It's really just a difference of religious ideology. It's really just different perspectives. And so we really wanted to go back to the drawing board on that. And what we ended up with is sort of represented here, where you have the ethereals on the left are more now, they have sort of the color palette that is what you might find on a medieval crusader: whites, reds, cardinal reds, maybe a little bit of black. And their religious imagery is very sharp and angular. In the fiction of the game, they worship a tree, so you might see that on their clothing. And on the side of the rebellions, you have browns, greens, whites, golds, colors that are a bit more natural. And in their religious imagery, it's round, it's soft. It often references the sun, which is sort of where their religious ideology comes from. Now, another giant push for the game was just pure content in the time that I worked on it. In that 8 months, we created dozens of weapons. I think it was 8 unique armor sets that you could swap like all of the pieces out of. There were these special like death sequence animations so that if, I think there were certain circumstances, like if you assisted somebody else killing someone, or like the last kill of any round, there would always be this special death animation where, like I think of the one that's up there, you like hit the guy up in the air and then like slash him once and then slash him twice and his head comes off. It was awesome. And it was a lot of fun. We actually, when we were making those, we took a camera and we went to a park in San Francisco and we brought our weapons with us. And like all of the office workers who were like on their lunch break in San Francisco were like, what is going on? And we just were hitting each other in this park. And let's see, was there anything else in content? I think that was it. It was like 4,000 frames of animation I think I animated in that 8 months. It was ridiculous. Because we also added 2, when I came onto the project, there was a sword and shield and a spear weapon. But we added 2 new weapon types, which required that amount of animation doubled at least. We actually, I think, quadrupled it by the end. So it was a massive undertaking. But behind that massive undertaking, there's a pipeline. So whenever I start working on a 3D asset, I always start here in my modeling package, which for me is Maya. And this is where, I mean, essentially all 3D assets are created out of tiny little triangles, and my job is to arrange them in a way that looks appealing and hopefully isn't over budget. And when I initially came onto the project, there were already, the character that you see there, he was already made for me by a different artist. So I never really had to touch those models too much. And really what I was doing was creating sort of the shoulder pads, the bracers, the greaves, the knee pads, helmets, weapons. I think a few environment assets as well in Maya. But a lot of what I did was texturing, which I did 100% in ZBrush. And it was really unfortunate because at the time, and I fully admit that the art in this game does not look good. It's not up to my standards, at least. I really didn't know enough about HD game development at the time to really understand all of the little intricacies about painting on top of 3D models and then like getting that detail onto lower poly or lower resolution models that you would actually see in game. And working with ZBrush was a huge headache, just getting like importing files and transferring information from one mesh to another. It's a giant headache, but now I know a lot more, and it's a great program. And then animation, for animation we used a program called Motion Builder. And while it really doesn't have, the tools there aren't exactly as nice to use as a program like Maya, like Autodesk Maya, what it really allowed us to do was to transfer animation data from one rig to the other 3 rigs that we had. So it greatly, it allowed me to work very efficiently. And if I needed to make a change to any of our animations, I could just make changes to one, and then I could cascade that down to the rest of our rigs. And I think along the way, we figured out that we were really doing everything wrong, which always happens. But if we had these 4 character rigs, and they all had the same exact animation data on them. So we were simply making 4 duplicates of this animation data, which was just bogging down the game really badly, and the download size was 4 times bigger than it needed to be. And
so you panicked?
No, we didn't panic. We didn't sell the game, so there was no point in panicking. It's just the way it is, and it runs okay. There was no money on the line except our graduate school tuition. You know. And then finally, after modeling and texturing and animation, you finally put the asset in your game engine, which for us was an engine called Unity, Unity 3D. And it's really nice to work with. We used it because it's cheap. Our school gave it to us. It's also fast. You can really put something on its feet very quickly in Unity. And I think it's I don't know why I'm asking you. JavaScript and
You saw the big picture.
I know. I think it's JavaScript and C++. Sounds right. Something like that. One of the C's. C#. It's definitely not C. It's either C# or C++. Anyway, but it's really fast for engineers to get things up and running. And as an artist, it's great because I can take my files almost directly out of Maya and bring them right in here with all of their animation, all of their materials hooked up. That is to say, a material is what defines how the polygons will look. Yeah, that's roughly correct. And then we actually had a proprietary tool that one of our engineers created, which would take the animation data from that file and parse it into different parts, so that we could then, so that we could call each of those animations when needed. So that was all a lot of fun, but it's a little bit different from what I do now, which is much more focused. What I'm doing for EA now is just modeling and texturing. And it's a very streamlined process. And sometimes, even in my work right now, I'm just doing modeling. And I'll pump out a character a day, right? That's all I do. And it's just meant to be very streamlined. And there are a lot more limitations in my work now, where we were making something that would be HD graphics for your PC with Ethereal. Now we're making mobile games. So really, where I would have 3,000 triangles to use for a character in Ethereal, that's half again as much for our mobile games. And here, this asset, this is actually the art test that I did to get into EA Sacramento. And here, I think my triangle limit was 700, and I could only use a 256 by 256 pixel RGBA texture, which was super challenging. That was great. I learned how to paint specifically to get this job. I'm not really a 2D artist. I had concept images to show that I made for Ethereal. I left them out because they're just so bad. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Cool.
I specifically do 3D modeling, and I'm trying to start getting into character design. So is there anything specifically, any tips that you can give me?
Yeah, totally. Draw and practice drawing a lot, especially for character design. That's really important. Character art specifically generally requires a higher attention to detail than something like environments. So it's really a high bar of quality. And for me personally, my art is not high enough quality to do something like HD games yet. Just keep practicing. Go to an art school. And practice.
You track.
One What were you going to say?
I was going to say track your work on a spreadsheet because I'm guessing a lot of these questions are going to be for Noah. So.
Go online and find character art communities. Polycount.com is a really great one. They have a forum there where artists in the industry will post what they're working on. It's an awesome resource for me. There's things that you can learn there, and really to check out what other artists are doing, and you can post your work there and get feedback as well. Thank you.
What would you say would help guarantee you a job in the industry?
What would guarantee a job? How to get one?
Marry into it. Yeah, no guarantees, of course. It's really, if you're coming in on, wow, this is like contradictory advice. Either be really like general, you can do just about anything, or be really good at one thing. We've got.
I would advise the latter.
It's
really good at one thing.
Right. There's fewer people that do everything than there are who do one thing really well.
Yeah. So you've got your subject matter experts. We call them SMEs. Those are the people who, like this guy, he's our house guy. He does houses really well. Or this guy knows PHP like the back of his hand. That kind of thing. So if you're really passionate about one aspect of it, really get good at that aspect of it.
What I was going to say is that a really good thing to do is to talk to people and find people in the industry that you can talk to, and make games. Whether you're making design documents right now or you're making board games, just make games.
Actually, that's probably the best way to,
guarantee that you can get into the industry is do the stuff, post the stuff, so that you have a body of work that when you're looking for a job, you can say, look, I've been making games since I was 14. Right. They can say, oh, that would catch my attention if you came into an interview and said, I have done these 6 games or this large body of work.
And playing games is good. It's just that when you're playing them, you really want to develop an understanding of what's there. Why are the designers making these choices? Why are the artists making these choices?
First of all, thank you guys for your time. What would you say was your greatest hurdle to get into the industry, and how did you overcome that?
Being in Sacramento was kind of, I kid. I got into the industry when I was living in San Francisco. I got the job in Sacramento. But honestly, like that was to get into Prima. And I just stumbled across ClickNation. I keep using that word because we had just come back from a very large dinner. But my plan had been to start looking in San Francisco area and everything like that. So. I would say for me, the biggest hurdle was that I didn't have any engineering background at all. I'm joking with that big red question mark. I actually have some knowledge of it now. I understand the sandwich analogy. Having, no matter what you go into, even if it's art or animation, having some knowledge of coding and engineering, just a touch, so that you can talk to engineers, you can talk to technical people. That would have been a big help, I think.
For me, I'd say it's just the quality of my work. I'm an associate artist, and I'm not ready to be an artist or a senior artist yet, and that's just going to take a little bit of time, and that was a real impediment for me when I was looking for jobs.
All right. Hey. Question. I know you've been working on stuff like Ethereal and some medieval warfare, very fast-paced PvP action. Would you ever consider a genre change?
A what?
A change of game pace? Oh,
well, yes. Ethereal was like a separate company from Electronic Arts. So do you mean would that group specifically do something different?
No, I mean would you wake up one morning and say, oh, I want to make, I don't know, a romance FPS or something?
That'd be interesting.
2014. Check our website at 2014. We'll see what happens.
For my part, for my part, I'm an artist, and I'm sort of going to go where work is. So I work at EA Sacramento right now, and I work on what they tell me to work on. That's not really up, that's me.
Hi, I think this question probably could go more to Mario. I'm interested in the monetization model and how that's changed in the industry. It used to start out, you'd go buy the box and get it and log in and do it that way, and then it got to be, you know, 10, 20 bucks a month, and now it's you play to pay, or you pay to play with, you know, the packs and that kind of thing. And I just am curious how things moved in that direction. Was it a consumer thing that drove that, or was it more in the industry, and how successful has been that? It seems like everything is kind of in the pay-to-play type of environment.
I'd say that has a lot to do with sort of the access. So you had your consoles, the only way you could play is via a computer, like a physical computer in your house, and the consoles, like the PlayStations and the Xboxes in the house. And now, you know, our bandwidth is such, and our hardware is, you know, so small at this point that you can get really good performance on very small areas, or you can get it over the internet onto your browser in Facebook. And so I think it's a lot of it had to do with what was available, what canvas was available for video games to be painted on. So with the advent of Facebook, suddenly, you know, someone got it in their head that, hey, I could put a game on here, and it could be a simple game, or in a browser, and put in a simple game. And then they started thinking about, like, well, you know, how can I make money off of this? No one's going to pay $60 for a browser-based game with no animations and just, you know, little castles that you're collecting from, and then, you know, sending out text-based battles at each other. So what would people pay for? And it's like, oh, to shrink the amount of time that they have to spend harvesting their gold or their corn or whatever. So I'd say it was a lot of that, just what became available for it. And now mobile, it's interesting, is so powerful that we're seeing almost, you know, console level games on our tiny phone devices. So
graphics quality and that kind
yeah,
of
exactly. But those can be sold for about $7, $9 rather than $60 because we don't have to manufacture CD cases, print out covers, and ship things on trucks anymore. So without that overhead, really sophisticated games can be delivered to people, you know, virtually, and so that brings that price down. And then there are some that can be made so cheaply, and they know that they'll be able to get, you know, X number of thousands of players a day, and if X percentage of those players pay 15 cents over the course of their lifetime, then they'll make enough money to cover their development. So it's back to the spreadsheets, really. You know, my PM has a monetization model Excel sheet where you can plug in different variables and see, like, okay, if we get 10,000 people into the game, we'll make this much money in 3 months. And from that, we can really kind of draw it down, so it becomes...
Kind of get your strategy up as to, okay, where are we getting the most bang for our buck?
Exactly.
To ramp it up as soon as possible.
Yeah, like how much can we then spend on marketing to get more people into the game? All sorts of ratios and percentages, lots of math.
Great fun. Thanks.
It's kind of that meta game of making a game, which is interesting to me. I think it's called The Sims.
What was your favorite game to get involved with?
Oh, gotcha. For me, I'd have to go back to the Prima days, I think. And it was Team Fortress 2. I managed the original strategy guide for that, and then I wrote an update for it when they had their first major update that then never got published. But since it came out, I've logged 1,400 hours. So it's a good game.
And I can't actually talk about any of the games that I've worked on at EA, but outside of that, I'd say that the favorite game that I've worked on is probably Ethereal. It was definitely the best, the best team atmosphere that I've been on outside of EA, I should say.
Good save.
Our team's fantastic. I love our team.
All right, so I have two questions. One, how long does it take you to create a 3D model by scratch?
From scratch. Again, I mean, it depends on the complexity. So in the work that I'm doing right now, I can model a 3D character and have its UVs, which are the texture coordinates. I can have that done in about a day and a half to 2 days. That's what I tell my producers.
What would you say to somebody who is interested in going into the gaming industry? Say maybe character design or testing.
Or testing? Oh, those are very different things.
What was that? I'm sorry, to get into the...
To get into the game industry, doing character design or testing.
Oh, wow. Well, testing, you sign up for QA. And they churn through QA testers in game companies. A lot of them huge brought on, and then they're and then when the game ships, they're pared down. But that's a really good way. Actually, let's go back to guaranteeing to get a QA testing is where a lot of people have started. Frank Jabro, who is the president of games, sounds like a made-up title, but he is actually president of games at EA. He started as a QA tester and did his job very well, very intelligent, and now he's president of EA. But it's also, it can be tough because QA is not just playing video games, it's running into walls. Every single wall in a game, day after day. It can be a grind, but you're in the industry and you've got a chance of working your way up in that industry.
We do have QA on staff here, right?
Yep, we've got 4 permanent QA people.
Yeah. So sometimes QA is a permanent position, but a lot of times it is not. And then design, character design. I don't know, could you elaborate a little bit more about?
Say 2D character design, 2D, not really animation, just regular design.
Right, more like concepting characters for a game. Right, I mean, practice your art, go to art school, get a degree in fine art or illustration, and just practice. Draw characters all the time. And show it to other people and get feedback. Put your work online and get feedback from people.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Essentially, like, also a myth that I grew up with was that I was going to get the job that I ended up with right out of college. That did not happen. It made me very angry for a while. Yeah, this guy. But then, you know, I got into the industry because I took a job as an editor, and not like a movie editor, making sure that the periods were in the right places, because I could do that, and I could do it well. And that kind of swept me along the road, and here I am today. So yeah, you can start in all sorts of different ways, and you could start in QA and become an illustrator if you have the illustration skills. If you know that's where you want to end up, do all the training that Noah's been talking about, all the practice, and that's really important. You put in those, 10,000 hours, and you're going to be good at what you're trying to do. And how you then get people to notice that, there are many, many paths.